Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public forum being held in the council chambers of Albury City for Monday, the 27th of June. Just a reminder that this public forum is being audio recorded for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this public forum that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this public forum. Item number 2, conflict of interest declarations received by the chair. Mr. CEO?
None received.
None received.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will then go to item 3, which is tonight's speakers. 3.1, Mr. Des Walters. This is in relation to the demolition of 2 dwellings and 3 Loch Torrens title subdivision in David Street, Albury, and he is speaking against Council's preferred recommendation. Mr. Walters, feel free to make your presentation. Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to address Council. My name is Des Walters and I live immediately adjacent the proposed subdivision on the southern side. I recognise that in this instance, the Council are considering the subdivision and not a development application for buildings. However, quite a lot of the objections that have been raised have been answered with the comment that'll be considered at a later date when the development application is submitted. To me, that's really just a way of dodging the issue. If a substandard subdivision goes ahead, and I use that terminology intentionally, as the proposed lots have a width less than Council's adopted standard. So if it does go ahead, the options for building development are severely limited. So I believe consideration of building restrictions that come with the reduction of allotment size should be considered before Council decides on the application. By reducing the width of the allotments to only 10 metres, which is not a small reduction, that's a 32% reduction to the Council guidelines, then the Council is almost forcing the developer to go up rather than build single-storey housing. If the minimum allotment width is not adhered to, then why have we got that guideline? Does it really matter? Yes, it does matter, and the reason for the requirement is obvious. If the developer follows the DCP, he is required to provide minimum setbacks of at least one side of the new building of either 900 or 1500, depending on the wall height. That effectively reduces the building width. And if he incorporates only a single garage, that again reduces the actual house width by another 3.5 metres and we end up with a size between 5 and 5.6 metres to build on. It's obvious that a proper dwelling can't be built on either 5.6 metres or 5 metres width, so the only option is to go up. Of course, if he puts a double garage in, then it's even more restrictive. Approving this reduction to width makes building a satisfactory dwelling quite difficult unless it goes up. There are no double-storey houses in the block bounded by North Street, Bellevue, David and Park Avenue. So this immediately makes the development at odds with the surrounding streetscape and poses problems of privacy and overshadowing. I can only think of 2 reasons why Council would want to approve a substandard subdivision. The first is to allow for more medium density housing. I'm not opposed to medium density housing if it's executed properly and located appropriately. However, going multi-storey in a single-storey neighbourhood or trying to cram little boxes on a narrow allotments is neither proper execution or appropriately located. It seems to me that if you want medium density housing, there are far better options, particularly for this property. For example, if the 2 blocks were combined, you could easily fit 3 upmarket single-storey townhouses on the property. That'd be very appropriate and probably give the developer a better return. In my objection, I suggested that I'd be happy to agree to the proposal if council were able to impose a condition of single-storey development only. The developer has responded that the council is unable to enforce that condition on him, so I think he has clearly flagged his intention. The only other reason to approve a substandard subdivision is because the developer has asked for it, and you can't see a reason not to refuse the request. I don't believe that the interest of any developer who does not intend to live in his development and has no interest in that community other than to put a dollar value on it should be put in front of those residents who have made the community their home. Councillors now have a choice. You can reject the application and enhance the community, or you can approve the application and degrade this community. I ask you to refuse the application on 2 counts. The allotment size does not meet the required minimum widths, and development of this type does not meet the aims of council's own strategic planning statements, which is to enhance the well-being of the community and environment, and that shared community values to be maintained and enhanced. This development does neither. Nor would 2-storey development meet the goals of being compatible with the existing and or emerging character of the locality, or in any other way maintain the amenity of nearby residents. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Councillors, any questions for Mr. Walters at all? That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Next speaker, 3.2, Mr. Sebastian Lloyd. It is in relation to the demolition of 2 dwellings and 3 Loch Torrens title subdivision in David Street, Albury, and he is speaking against council's preferred recommendation. Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd's not present. Not zooming in remotely? No. In that case, that concludes tonight's public forum. Thank you very much for your attendance. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting held in the council chambers of Albury City for this Monday, the 27th of June, commencing at 6:08 p.m. So we will start off with our opening affirmation. Oh, one moment. Before we start the formal process of tonight's council meeting, I do believe, yes, we had our next guest speaker had inability to get into the building after hours, so our apologies for that. So referring back to our public forum, I do call on Mr. Sebastian Lloyd to come to the podium. He is speaking in relation to the demolition of 2 dwellings and 3 Loch Torrens title subdivision in David Street, Albury, and speaking against council's preferred recommendations. Apologies for having you locked out, Mr. Lloyd.
No, apologies for being late.
Settle down. Take your time.
I don't have much prepared. I just find it beggars belief that we're allowed to subdivide 2 plots into 3 against council guidelines. I'm not sure if you're aware of the area where this is, but we actually have to endure very heavy congestion with the netball park, the rugby, the skate park. And when people are trying to get out of their dwellings in that area, it's very hard and it's very dangerous. Now, if you're going to put 3 dwellings on a space that was 2 with minimal parking or minimal off-road parking, you know, what's going to go on there? 3-bedroom house, you're going to get 3 couples in there, 6 cars a house. I am going to the extremes here, but I'm just trying to point out to you, you know, that is extreme congested parking along a very, very busy road and very, very near a intersection. You know, we have these guidelines for a reason. Realise guidelines are open to interpretation, but I just don't think it's in keeping with the area.
Thank you very much for stating your point of view and speaking on against that tonight. Councillors, any questions at all in relation to tonight's guest speaker? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting for this Monday, 27th of June at 6:11. So we will commence with our opening affirmation and acknowledgement of country. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom, and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all. We'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Thank you. Item CM3, conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair and disclosure of political donations. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor King. No conflict of interest declarations received this evening. Item 3.2, disclosure of political donations. The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, Section 10.4 requires a person submitting a planning application or submission regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of the council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375 requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the Council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of Council under the Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contributions plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mayor King.
Item CM 4.1, apologies. There are no apologies for the meeting, but noting that one of our councillors has not yet been able to make it on audio-visual link, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Item 4.2, attendance by councillors at the meeting by audio-visual link. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to recommend that Council receive, note and accept the attendance of Councillor Baker, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Glacken and Councillor Callaghan by audio-visual link or Zoom for this meeting.
And just noting that Councillor Glacken has been unable to get on at this stage, so we will welcome her and note her should that situation change. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion.
And Councillor Bowen, procedural, happy to
No,
put the
happy
motion?
to put that.
In that case, can I put the motion? Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM5, mayoral minute. There is no mayoral minute. CM6, action plans. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress, and 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Have a seconder for the motion before we go to a question. Councillor Bowen.
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan, a question?
Thank you, Mayor King. I have a question in relation to CM 13.7, just an update on the governance transition of Mama.
Yes, Mr. CEO. Mr. CEO can answer that.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question through you, Mayor King. So the application was submitted in accordance with the council's resolution some time ago, almost 12 months ago now. The consultation process was completed, and there were concerns or feedback concerns provided both from the Office of Local Government and the United Services Union around one, the model going forward that was proposed in terms of a standalone entity, and secondly, the employment model that was proposed to align with that corporate entity to be known as Mama Limited. So we've been in further discussions with both the USU and the Office of Local Government, and seeking a face-to-face discussion, or at least an online discussion with the Minister in the coming week, to determine, one, the status of the application, whether it will in fact be recommended or otherwise, and secondly, what other matters need to be addressed in order to enable the entity to be established, or approval for the entity to be established to be granted by the Local Government Minister.
Councillor Callaghan, any follow-up questions on the relation to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Sacknich.
Any other questions, speakers for or against this item? In that case, Councillor Thurley, are you happy to put the motion?
Yes.
Put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM7, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. Councillor Betteridge.
Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday, the 14th of June, 2022 at 6:19 p.m. be confirmed.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Betteridge, happy for me to put the motion?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Councillors, the motion is put. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item CM8, reports from community forums. There are none. CM9, notices of motion or notices of rescission. There are none. CM10, presentations and deputations. We have none. CM11, reports or minutes of committees and working parties. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to recommend that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes of the Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 18th of May, 2022 at 7 p.m.
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you very much. Do you wish to speak to the minutes or the report? Thanks.
I don't wish to speak to it. I'll allow Councillor Callaghan to do so.
Councillor Callaghan, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. I'd just like to highlight some of the successes of the Sports Advisory Committee. I think one of the biggest highlights is the Albury Skate Park success, which I know will be booming come these school holidays, and I'm sure is already filled today with Victorian school students on break. So the lights are now on until 9 p.m. Toilets are in the design phase, and the CCTV installation is under investigation, and I think has been shown to have success with the portable one that has been there. The Wonga Wetlands Wagara Trail is nearing completion. Thurgoona outdoor exercise equipment is now complete. And the Willow and Belvoir Park master plans are completed thanks to community consultation. So just some highlights of the Albury-Wodonga Sports Advisory Committee and what's happening locally there. So,
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Bowen, are you happy to put the motion, or does anyone wish to speak further, councillors? In that case, I'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM12, documents for sealing. Councillor Betteridge.
You, Mayor King, I'd like to move that Council authorises its seal to be affixed to the documents outlined below in the presence of 2 signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government in brackets General Regulation 2005 and the Council seal of management of legal documents and advice procedure. A, Albury City lease to Ramjo, Suite 4, 4th floor of 553 Kiwa Street, Albury, commencing on the 1st of July 2022 for 2 years, in brackets with 2-year option, commencing 1st of July 2022, in brackets FIL 09/01805.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Betteridge, you happy to put the motion? Or
Yes, I am.
if
Thank
there's
you.
no further debate or questions, councillor? Happy to put the motion. Those
Yes,
for? Those against? Thank you, councillors. The motion is carried. Item CM13, officers' reports for consideration. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to recommend that Council A, acknowledges the submissions received during the public exhibition period, and B, amends the exhibited draft 4-year delivery program 2022 to 2026, draft 2022/23 operational plan, and draft long-term financial plan by 1, aligning with amendment made to the draft community strategic plan towards Albury 2050. 2, allocating $261,725 per annum to complete identified playground shade works. 3, deferring project budget spend of $500,000 for the Australia Park car park and linking footbridge new initiative to 2023-24. 4, deferring project budget spend of $300,000 for the building Melrose Park Sports Pavilion construction new initiative to 2023/24. 5, deferring project budget spend of $300,000 for the Sarvis Park building upgrade in brackets design and construction, end of brackets, new initiative to 2023/24. 6, deferring project budget spend of $100,000 for the Hoggy Albury-Wodonga new initiative to 2023/24. And 7, removing the duplicate new initiative titled Building Alexandra Park Hockey/Athletics Track Amenities Building in brackets design phase. 8, including operational plan action, collaborate and advocate to further enhance health services to improve the overall health of our community in section 3.2. 9, reallocating operational plan, reallocating operational plan action, health precinct master plan from section 3.6 to 3.2. 10, including operational plan action progress Albury City aquatic strategy in section 3.6. 11, including Albury City urban forest strategy as an operational plan action. 12, including Albury City climate change action plan implementation as an operational plan action. 13, aligning drainage asset renewal projects to section 1.1 of a growing sustainable economy within the operational plan. 14, aligning the net zero emission fleet transition plan implementation to section 2.1.1 of an enhanced natural environment within the new initiatives booklet. C, adopts the amended draft 4-year delivery program 2022 to 2026, draft 2022/23 operational plan and draft long-term financial plan. D, votes the expenditure set out in the operational plan for the 2022/23 year. E, makes each rate and charge for the 2022/23 year in accordance with the exhibited 2022/23 statement of revenue policy. And F, makes each fee and charge for the 2022/23 year in accordance with the exhibited 2022/23 schedule of fees and charges. Section 494 of the Local Government Act 1993 requires council to make and levy ordinary rates on all rateable land in its area for the 2022/23 financial year. And section 497B of the Local Government Act 1993 provides the method of structure for council's rates. The council ordinary rate has a base amount to which an ad valorem amount is added. The base amount is in accordance with sections 499 and 500 of the Local Government Act 1993. The ad valorem amount and base amount will apply for the 2022/23 year, and there is a graph to follow.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second it.
You're the easy part. Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillors, happy to open to debate or questions. Any speakers for or against in relation to the motion? In that case, Councillor Edwards, you'd like to speak for the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King. Look, I'm really pleased to support this budget, which includes so many great initiatives. I'm particularly proud to support a budget that delivers policy reform to facilitate the transition to a circular economy, solar shade on car parks, EV charging stations, and the development of an EV strategy, shared bike and footpaths and the CBD bike loop for active transport, shade and play spaces for our families, upgrades to the Animal Care Centre to help us care for animals in need, implementation of our amazing Reconciliation Action Plan, and ongoing support for our Youth Council and youth management activities. I also note and welcome the community feedback that the stakeholder engagement around our CSP and budget could be more transparent, with all submissions publicly available, and I look forward to that happening in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Bowen, did you
I have a question.
have a question?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, if I may, just to the relevant member of staff, just want to note on point number 4, part B, point number 4, deferring the project budget spend of $300,000 for the building of Melrose Park Sports Pavilion, construction new initiative to 2023-24. Just wanted to check that we are still doing part of that spend, and that building construction is going ahead in the 22-23 period.
Mr. Costello.
Thanks very much for the question, Councillor Bowen, and through you, Mayor King. Absolutely, there's just a, excuse me, the delay is just simply a matter of a majority of the expenditure associated with construction will be in the follow-up year. So it's just about staging that budget to coincide with the construction costs across the 2-year period.
Follow-up question?
Thank you. So just to clarify for my benefit is that the process will be starting in the next financial year, though, in 22-23.
Thanks very much for the question, for the follow-up, Councillor Bowen, and through you, Mayor King. Absolutely, yeah. So we're currently working through the detailed design process, and the construction would follow the tender after that period.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors. Any other questions or speakers for or against? Councillor Bowen, do you wish to close debate?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor King. I don't wish to close debate other than to just be happy to put it to vote. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and it's been a pretty long process, and it's been very well done.
Thank you very much. In that case, we'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM, where am I? CM 13.2. This is in relation to a development application. Does anyone wish to put the motion for? It's in relation to alterations and additions to commercial premises, additional use, education establishment, signage and planning agreement for car parking at 425 Keyworth Street in Albury. Councillor Edwards, first up.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives the contents of this report, B grants consent to development application 10.2022.39336.1 an associated planning agreement at 425 Keyworth Street, Albury, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determinations included at attachment 6 to this report. C agrees to enter into a planning agreement for the payment of monetary contributions in lieu of 8 car parking spaces as outlined in the draft planning agreement between Albury City Council and Navish Kumar, and D hereby authorises its seal to be affixed to the planning agreement as part of the determination of the development application 10.2022.39336.1 in the presence of 2 signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2021 and the Council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedure.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion at all?
No, thank you, Mayor King.
Any speakers for or against, or questions? In that case, happy to put the motion. We'll call a division given it's a development application. So those for: Councillor Thurley, Councillor Bowen, Councillor King, Councillor Betteridge, Councillor Baker, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Cameron and Councillor Callaghan. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM 13.3 is in relation to a development application 10.2021.39063.1, 2-lot subdivision 19 Alpine Street, Thaguna. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.2021.39063.1 for a 2-lot Torrens title subdivision at 19 Alpine Street, Thaguna, described as Lot 204 DP 1249471, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 5 to this report.
Councillor Betteridge.
Happy to second that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to open debate?
Thank you briefly, Mayor. There were a number of issues raised by people in the vicinity, but this lot unsubdivided amounts to about almost 2,000 square metres. In that case, it is almost the biggest block in this general area. When subdivided, it gives 2 blocks of 1,000 square metres and 934. And one objection was that this provided 2 small blocks. However, there are already 4 other lots of a similar size in this area. So this will not be out of keeping with the general developments in this area. And therefore, this is why I've moved that we should approve the development.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Edwards, speaking for the motion.
Thank you, Mayor King. I also wanted to comment on some of the submissions. Some of the sentiments in the submissions were actually quite hard to read, particularly in the midst of a housing crisis and from what I'd like to think is a caring and inclusive community. It's well documented that a mix of housing types, tenures, lot sizes and residents is of great social benefit to the whole community. I also haven't forgotten the woman that stood up at the Council Candidates Forum in Thagoona last year and reminded us that retired and the ageing population require smaller dwellings that are easier to maintain. This is a bit besides the point though, as at 1,000 square metres, these lots are hardly small and probably financially out of reach for many. I understand that the construction noise and traffic can be a nuisance, however this will be managed in accordance with the requirements and will be necessary to build these future homes, no more or less than it was necessary to build all the homes that are already in the area. I'm quite satisfied that the requirement for stormwater plan included in the conditions of this DA will address the stormwater issues, and I see no reason for councillors not to support the motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any other speakers for or against or questions? Councillor Thurley, do you wish to, happy to put the motion? I'll put the motion again in division, councillors. Those for, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Bowen, Councillor King, Councillor Betteridge, Councillor Baker, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Cameron and Councillor Callaghan. The motion is carried. Item CM 13.4, Development Application 10.202.39200.1, demolition of 2 dwellings and 3 lot Torrens title subdivision at 782 to 784 David Street in Albury. Any councillors wish to move a motion in relation to this one? Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives the contents of the report and B grants consent to development application 10.2022-39200.1 for demolition of 2 residences, tree removal and a 3-lot Torrens title subdivision at 782 and 784 David Street, North Albury, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 6 to this report.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King. I listened and read the submissions, but I need to make it very clear that all we're doing here is approving the subdivision. We're not approving any housing or any other matter. Yes, the development does not meet all of our DCP requirements, but the DCP requirements are not a statutory authority. They are simply guidelines. The developer or whoever buys this land will have the problem of designing suitable housing which meets all the requirements and does not affect the amenity of the neighbours. Originally, those 2 houses were to be developed and blocks of units which were double-storey were to be placed there. And I remember Mr. Walters made an objection to that because of overshadowing, and that development was not approved. However, this is a different development. At the moment, it's only seeking approval for subdivision. I understand why submitters say, yes, but what's this going to lead to? Unfortunately, we can't deal with that at the moment. There is no planning matter before us in that regard.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I just have a question to the relevant member of staff, just basing on splitting that block into 3. I drove past there today just to have another look at it. There's quite a large tree at the front, a power pole and a lighting pole, all in the vicinity of those 2 blocks that are now going to split into 3. Is it a requirement for us to be able to get access to that without having to remove those items? Is that something we need to work on today?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bowen, and for you, Mayor King. In this particular case, they're not proposing to remove or impact upon the street trees. So it's not part of this application. Obviously, any future application will need to consider infrastructure and also any other constraints in regards to existing street trees and other infrastructure in the vicinity, but it's not part of this application tonight.
Any follow-ups? Question, Mr. Christie, just obviously it was mentioned in, I guess, the public forum tonight in terms of that the width has been reduced and that seems to be a concern. Can you clarify your thinking around that and the recommendation that you put forward to council around that, the minimum width?
Yep. Thank you for the question and for you, Mayor King. In regards to it, obviously it's outlined in the report, but in summation, there's a variety of things that we do take into account. One is that 10 metres in a relatively inner city context, and I'll consider this area in the inner areas of Albury, it's not in the outer growth areas. There are many opportunities to be able to design developments accordingly that would accommodate a 10-metre width in this particular case, whether they be single story or two story. There are also many successful examples in Albury of two-story dwellings and single dwellings where they live in relative harmony adjacent to each other. So in regards to that, we were convinced of the merits of the case, and there are opportunities to be able to adequately design a dwelling. Yes, there are some dwellings that may not suit the site, but there is ample opportunities at the over 10-metre width to be able to design a dwelling to adequately suit the site and minimise any impacts upon the adjoining properties.
Thanks, Mr. Christie. Any other questions or speakers for or against? Councillor Thurley, did you wish to sum up? Happy to put the motion. Happy to put the motion again in division, councillors. Those for. Councillor Baker, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Bowen, Councillor King, Councillor Betteridge. Those against? Councillor Cameron, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM 13.5, Albury City Statement of Business Ethics and Procurement Policy Review. Does anyone care to put the motion? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A endorse Albury City's draft revised statement of business ethics and draft social and sustainable procurement policy. B, rescind Albury City's contract management policy. C, publicly exhibit the draft revised statement of business ethics and draft social and sustainable procurement policy for a period of 28 days. And D, if no submissions are received, the draft revised statement of business ethics and draft social and sustainable procurement policy be adopted.
My own microphone, Councillor Thurley.
I second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion at all?
Yes, please, Mayor King. This is a positive policy update for Albury City, and I'm pleased to support our council to avoid greenwashing, reject goods and services that are the product of modern slavery, and to instead support fair trade principles and therefore the environment and the rights and conditions of marginalised workers. Thank you.
Any speakers for or against? In that case, Councillor Edwards, are you happy for me to put the motion or did you wish to? Oh, Councillor Callaghan is speaking for, is that correct? No, ready to vote, sorry. In that case, if we're happy to put the motion, Councillor Edwards, those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM 13.6, Aquatics Facilities Management, Extension of Season and Potential Contract Extension. Councillor Betteridge.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that council
Put the microphone really close, sorry.
A, endorse an extension to the 2022-23 swim season at Albury Swim Centre based on normal operating hours, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m, Saturdays, 7 a.m. to, oh, sorry. I'll begin again. I'd like to move that Council A, endorse an extension to the 2022-23 swim season at Albury Swim Centre based on normal operating hours, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m, Saturdays, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m, and Sundays, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m from early September 2022 to late June 2023, with up to a maximum additional investment of $200,000 when compared to operating costs for a standard swim season, and subject to patronage of an average of at least 500 visits per week during the extension period. B, Authorise the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and finalise a 12-month extension to the contract number FILI 17/041480 under Section 3.1 contract variation of the contract management procedure subject to the pricing assumptions presented in this report, and the City of Wodonga also resolving to a 12-month extension with Allied Leisure to the provision of management services of the operation of Albury and Wodonga Aquatics Facilities Agreement.
Thank you, Councillor Betteridge. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Thurley? Oh, Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to second the motion?
I do, Mayor King.
Do you wish to second that motion?
Sorry. Yes, I do wish to second the motion. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Betteridge, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. The opportunity to extend the swim season at Albury Swim Centre, I think, is important. It's been supported by a large number of community members, and I think this is opportune time to follow up with the community has said in Have Your Say that we wish to have it. So we've had 567 people have nominated and spoken. Of that, 91% have said they would use that. So to have an expectation of 500 visits per week is fair and reasonable. And I think to cap an expenditure at $200,000 in addition to the initial costs, I think, again, fair and appropriate. I think what we're looking at is this is an experiment. We've been told and we've heard. What we're going to do is we're going to invest money into our community to see if this works. If the community supports it, it will continue. If the community doesn't support it, then we'll have the information. And I think an extension of a year to the contract is more than appropriate and can be fitted in by the General Manager's delegation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have speakers for and against. First of all, speaker for, Councillor Callaghan, speaker against, first of all. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to
Thank you, Mayor King.
the motion?
Yes, I would. I will speak. I'd also like to amend the motion. I don't know, do I speak against it then amend it, or?
It's up to you. Did you wish to amend the motion? If you wish to,
I do wish to amend the motion.
Yeah, we can certainly test that.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a question, yeah. So you'd like to amend the motion? Did you want to outline that? And then we'll.
Jenny, have you got that up? Grace. I would like to move exactly what Councillor Betteridge has suggested, which is to endorse an extension to the 2022-2023 swim season at Albury Swim Centre based on normal operating hours, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m, and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m, and Sundays, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m, from early September 2022 to late June 2023, up to a maximum additional investment of $200,000 when compared to operating costs for a standard swim season, and subject to patronage of an average of at least 500 visits per week during the extension period. And B, defer the authorisation for the CEO to negotiate and finalise a 12-month extension to contract number FIL 17/01480 under Section 3.1 contract variation of the contract management procedure until further clarification is sought.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Edwards. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to speak to the amended motion?
I do. Thank you, Mayor King. Just get my notes. It is in reference to Part B. I am very glad that the trial will hopefully go ahead of the Albury Swim Centre, and based on the numbers, 567 people saying that they are wanting to use it. So very happy in point A for the trial to go ahead. But with regards to the contract, I think we don't give contracts to people or corporations. They apply through a tendering process. And I think if Aligned Leisure are the winning tender, then I'm okay with that. However, they should be going through the same process as every other contractor. And we didn't give away the cleaning contract. Will we give away other contracts? I hope not. It is not unreasonable to ask that the contract go to tender. If Wodonga wish to give their contract away and prefer to go to that, then I think that should be on them. But I believe we should uphold what is ethically correct, even if it's unfavourable. You know, we talk about a group as collective integrity, and perhaps we should look at the business ethics and procurement framework to guide our decision-making this evening. I would like to see this discussed further, as it not only affects Albury facilities, it is a two cities, one community initiative. And any variances regarding the trial of extending the season could be included in the tendering process. I think deferring for further consultation and discussion is required on this matter. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Speaker against, Councillor Thurley.
I speak against the amended motion in that all we're proposing is an extension of the contract, and this is quite normal. We are going to a trial of opening this swim centre for a longer period, and to couple that with a total new operator or contractor would be quite confusing in my opinion. Frequently, when we have contracts and the whole business isn't finished at the end of the contract, we will extend the contract. We know the people, we know how they work, and they know how we work. So I believe that I'm totally in support of the extended season, but I think that we could very easily and very properly extend the contract, and it would not be in breach of our processes for tendering. I think the last thing we would want is a tender which takes 3 months to sort out who becomes the successful tenderer. We already have a company that knows how to run the joint. Yes, there can be some criticisms of what they've done and how they've done it, but all we're doing here is extending their contract for a period of 12 months. And I think that would be sensible in the light of this other change that we're making to the swim centre operation. So I won't support the amended motion. I will support the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Question, Councillor Edwards.
I'm wondering if Councillor Baker had a question before mine.
Oh, sorry, it's just the lighting's a little tricky where you ask, Councillor Baker. Sorry for that. Councillor Baker, did you wish
No, I haven't. No, I'd like to speak for it. So go for the question first, and then after that, I will explain why I'm supporting the amendment.
Terrific. Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Okay, thank you, Mayor King. My question through you to the most relevant member of staff is just a clarification around, is the contract being extended from June 2023 to June 2024?
Mr. Glass.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Edwards, and through you, Mayor King. That is correct. The existing contract expires June 2023, and the recommendation is to extend it to June 2024.
Councillor Edwards. Sorry, hang on. Mr. CEO, did you want to clarify?
Yeah, the recommendation seeks to align with if and when the City of Wodonga extend the contract for the same period. That's essentially the reason for the Part B.
Councillor Edwards, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Through you again. So to further clarify, the trial extension is within the existing contract until June 2023. Is that correct?
Mr. Glass.
Thank you for the question, and further to what our CEO highlighted, yes, the trial runs through till June 2023. By not extending the contract, it does create a number of operational challenges, as well as a significant contractual risk as outlined in the business risk section of the report, particularly noting if we were to just have to negotiate a contract in isolation without the scale of Wodonga and the year-round operation of Wodonga, that could, it's been indicated to us that could preclude some large operators from making an application. And secondly, small operators may have to build additional cost into their labour arrangements. And operationally, the challenge will be if both the contract and if council choose to extend the swim season, and to the end of June or even beyond the end of June, then that creates some operational challenges with the end of that swim season, and then having to do a transition to a new supplier and decommissioning the existing facility, etc. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards, did you have a follow-up again to that?
Just a final question, if I may. So the report noted that there would be some challenges if the option of internal management was explored further. However, am I right in saying that it's not impossible?
Mr. Glass.
Thank you for the question. And through you, Mayor King, it's not impossible. We would have to go and acquire additional skills that we don't currently get in terms of the operation of the facility at the moment, but not impossible, but extremely challenging.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. And just before yourself, Councillor Baker, before you speak to it, I just have a question. It does say in our motion that it's going to go from September to late June. Is there the possibility that late June is not an exact time? Is there a possibility that it could finish 2 weeks before the end of June, therefore giving time to sum up and equate that, or to the relevant member of staff, or could we extend their contract for 3 months up until September before the new season starts to hit the ground running rather than a 12-month period?
Mr. Glass.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bowen, and through you, Mayor King. Yes, both of those are options, but I encourage councillors to consider the misalignment with the City of Wodonga if we were to extend it by 3 months and not align with Wodonga, and the significant challenge of reducing our leverage in terms of having 4 pools and only having 2 pools instead of 4 pools, etc.
Councillor Baker, did you have a speaking for? Is that right?
Yes, I would like. Thanks, Mayor King. Yes, I would like to speak for the amendment. I must admit I'm in favour of A, which has not changed in either the original recommendation or this one, but I was uneasy prior to this on B, and I think this amendment is really well worded. It doesn't say won't extend. It doesn't say that we won't authorise the Chief Executive Officer to read or to negotiate and finalise a 12-month extension at a later date, but it does ask for time to look into this in a lot more depth. I do not know all the ins and outs of this particular topic. We haven't been briefed adequately on it to this point, and I think it's prudent and very, very good management to uphold or agree with the amendment put forward by Councillor Callaghan tonight. Now, I just can't see the point of rushing into the previous motion without all the information that I would need as a councillor to do my job properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any further speakers for or against the amended motion? Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. In relation to the initial contract, perhaps the alignment should have been thought of when the contract was awarded initially, and I suppose not put on us to extend or make that without due consideration. And yes, in agreement with you, Mr. Councillor Thurley, the Aligned Leisure is not a proven entity. It is not a sure bet, and there has been much criticism. The trial will finish, as will the contract, in June 2023, and any successful applicant could accommodate a longer season with a year's planning time for 2024. And I look forward to further discussions and briefings if this deferment is voted for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. In that case, if there's no other speakers for or against, I'm happy to put the amended motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Oh, the amendment's carried. Right, so the amendment becomes the motion, right. So now we put the motion. There it is in writing. So any further comments in relation to that motion as it now appears? Okay, happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you for your patience as I navigated that. Item 13.7, Multicultural Plan, Project Scope and Stakeholder Engagement Plan. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council endorses the project scope and stakeholder engagement plan for the development of a multicultural plan.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, what we're looking at here is a stakeholder engagement plan, and it's something that's critically needed given we have very large called communities now in this city, Bhutanese, Congolese, but coming from various places now. The stakeholder engagement plan is comprehensive and wide, and I think easily accessible to those who want to have something to say. So I'm very much in favour of this.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Councillor Edwards speaking for the motion.
Thank you, Mayor King. I had the pleasure of representing Albury City at the Albury-Wodonga Refugee Week event on Saturday. And it was a lovely reminder of what a wonderfully diverse and inclusive place we live in. I look forward to seeing the results of the stakeholder engagement, the draft multicultural plan, and hearing how Albury City can best support the needs of our multicultural community.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any further speakers for? Briefly, I'll also speak for the motion too. Just sort of reading through the report and learning that more than 10% of residents living in Albury were born overseas really struck a chord with me. So I tend to think it is timely that we develop this plan in its outright. And certainly one of the real joys, I think, as the Mayor and many councillors who've attended citizenship ceremonies, you can see the eagerness of the migrants who, when they become Aussies, and it's very much a part of the day, and part of me would love to learn how I can support them better and also learn from them as well. And I think Councillor Edwards, when she touched on, the Refugee Week celebrations, it was a terrific day. But speaking to, I guess, some of the agencies, a few of them commented that it was a great turnout, but a lot of people from Albury couldn't get the transport organised to actually attend the event in Wodonga. So again, that's being mindful of some of those limitations. So I do speak in support of this motion. Any other speakers for or against? In summing up, I'm trying to recall who moved. Councillor Thurley, sorry, I didn't take note of who I guess put that motion. So if you're happy to put the motion, if there's no further debate, those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillor, item CM 13.8 is the Disability Inclusion Action Plan 2022 to 2026 public exhibition submissions. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move that the council receives and notes the submissions received during the public exhibition of the Draft Disability Inclusion Action Plan 2022/2026, and B, adopts the Draft Disability Inclusion Action Plan 2022-2026.
Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve my right to sum up.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm proud to support the plan, particularly the improvements to accessibility to Albury City facilities and events, and the pilot of low sensory spaces in our libraries, which I know will be welcomed by our local families with neurodiverse children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bowen, do you wish to close debate if there are no further speakers?
Thank you, Mayor King. I wish to acknowledge the Disability Inclusion action plan and to say what a great job is done in terms of the staff and also for the community engagement. It was great to see that the Auslan interpreter was also included into that as well too. I thought that was a great addition. So I'd like to commend the team on a great job and look forward to seeing this come to fruition.
Thank you very much, councillors. We'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item CM 13.9, Reconciliation Action Plan, Public Exhibition Submissions. Councillor Thurley, I think is first up there.
Is there a one up there somewhere? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council 1 receives and notes the submissions received during the public exhibition of the draft Albury City Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan June 22 to June 2024 and adopts the draft Albury City Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan for June 22 June 2024 and endorses that the documents should be submitted to Reconciliation Australia seeking their final endorsement. 3, in accordance with Action 15, within the respect pillar of the Albury City Innovate Reconciliation Plan, Albury City calls on the Australian Government to continue to demonstrate strong leadership in support of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples by supporting constitutional recognition for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and endorsing the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Cameron. Did you wish to speak, Councillor Cameron? Just happy to second the motion.
Only to second the motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any speakers? Oh, actually, Councillor Thurley to start with to open debate.
Thank you, Mayor King. I think this is a really important thing that we're doing. I'd have to say I was disappointed to see people with offensive comments in their submissions. I was disappointed to read someone who wrote that why are we apologising for someone's great-great-grandparents who did something else to someone else's great-great-grandparents. This is happening still. It wasn't 100 years ago that we were not treating our Indigenous people with respect and properly. So we need this reconciliation plan. I guess those offensive submissions highlight the need for this thing. I believe that we can really do a lot for our Indigenous cousins, brothers, sisters, but we can also do a lot for Australia and for this city by recognising them and having this plan. And I'd like our city to be in the forefront of this. And I think with this reconciliation plan, we are leading the way.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I support the endorsement of the Reconciliation Action Plan, which I see as a really important step in our reconciliation journey. But I would also like to move an amendment to part 3 of the motion, please.
Yes, could you clarify the amendment to the motion, please, Councillor Edwards?
I believe it should be available to be put on the screen.
Yep, or just get on the screen. And I think it is in relation to part 3 coming up there. Is that correct? Yep.
Yes. So as moved, with an amendment to part 3 to read in accordance with Action 15 within in the respect pillar of the Albury City Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan, Albury City calls on the Australian Government to continue to demonstrate strong leadership in support of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples by endorsing the Uluru Statement from the Heart, establishing a process for truth-telling, negotiating a treaty and reforming our constitution to enshrine a voice to Parliament for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Thurley, are you happy to accept the amendment?
Yes, I am.
Apologies, I had you turned off. Could you?
Yes, I'm happy to accept the amendment.
Fantastic, thank you. So this now becomes the motion. Any speakers for or against further to what's been mentioned there? I just wanted to quickly add that I was recently proud to represent Albury City at the National General Assembly of Local Government. There were about 1,000 delegates that all got together in Canberra, and the Assembly there committed to progressing the next step of closing the gap, and also passed a motion supporting the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which is what we've talked about here tonight and is mentioned in this motion and also in the report. So it's just nice to know Albury City is certainly in lockstep with councils from around Australia when it comes to developing reconciliation action plans. So yeah, I just wanted to speak in support of that. So if there's no further speakers for or against, Councillor Edwards, did you wish to say something in closing or in addition?
Yeah, just wanted to clarify that this amendment has come out of respect for the statement's intent, and it seeks to include the two other core components of the statement, being truth and treaty, into the motion. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to just wrap up? Happy to put the motion. In that case, councillors, we'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 13.10, Our People Workforce Management Strategy 2022-2026. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move an alternative motion if possible.
You may.
Thank you. I move that Council, in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act 1993, endorse the draft Our People strategy as the Albury City Workforce Management Strategy component of the resourcing strategy to take effect for the period 1 July 2022 to 30 June 2026, with the following amendment: that the last strategic action for the priority wellbeing and safety first on page 23 reads, develop a family and domestic violence policy outlining Albury City's commitment to the prevention of family and domestic violence through raising awareness about behaviour change and gender equity and supporting employees who are affected by family and domestic violence.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Bowen.
I'd like to second that motion. Thank you, Mayor King.
Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King. The reason for this amendment was to ensure that Albury City in all areas is proactive in the prevention of family and domestic violence rather than just reactive. Other than that, I think it's a great strategy, and I look forward to hearing the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any other speakers for or against or questions? Councillor Edwards, are you happy for me to put the motion, or did you wish to add anything further?
No, I'm happy if no one has any views.
Thank you for your amendment. Happy to put this motion, councillors. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM 13.11, Alcohol-Free Zones and Alcohol Prohibited Areas Review 2022 Stakeholder Engagement. Do we have a councillor who would like to discuss that? Councillor Betteridge.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that Council A receives and notes the report, and B endorses the project scope and stakeholder engagement plan, alcohol-free zones and alcohol prohibited areas review 2022.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Betteridge, did you wish to make any comments?
Don't wish to speak to it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Not a problem. We do have a question, Councillor Thurley.
Question to the most relevant member of staff. The alcohol free zone in the CBD only extends to the end of Dean Street. And I've had commentary from members of the public about bad behaviour in the, I think it's called the Veterans Park, people getting flagons of stuff from First Choice or Murphy and going over there, drinking it, tossing the empty, smashing them and so on. So I'd like that we could extend that CBD area across to there.
So is there a question for Ms. Code in relation to that question or
can we do it?
observation? I'm trying to work out whether it was, can we do it? There's probably the clarification. I think I've got the right microphone there.
Thank you for the observation and question, Councillor Thurley, and for you, Mayor King. Thank you. That is exactly why we're having this stakeholder engagement period, to get the feedback from the community and from council, police and all the other relevant parties to see what we need to do, whether we do need to make changes. And that is an area that has been brought to our attention previously, and we will certainly be including that in the draft zoning.
Any follow-up questions? Or happy with that? Any other questions, councillors, or debate? Councillor Betteridge, happy to put the motion, or did you wish to sum up? Happy for the motion to be put. Great. In that case, we'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion's carried. Item CM 13.12, investment policy and procedure review. Councillor Bowen.
I'd like to put an amended motion, if I may. Thank you. So that Council A, receives and notes the annual review of the Albury City's investment policy and procedure. B, endorses the draft revised investment policy and procedure as presented to Council, including the following additional amendment. 1, that Albury City preference investments to financial institutions that do not support the fossil fuel industry, and also environmental and socially responsible investments where the rate of return is within 2.5% of comparable investments on offer at the time of the investment. And we'd include an example of how that works. So basically 2.5 of whatever the term of the investment is. C, continue to advocate to T Corp to enable a greater percentage of Council's investments to be placed with our local banks. D, publicly exhibit the draft revised investment policy and procedure for a period of 28 days. And E, if no submissions are received, the draft revised investment policy and procedure be adopted and placed on public policy and procedure register.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Callaghan, you wish to second the motion? Yes, Councillor Callaghan, you wish to second that motion? You're on mute, I think.
Thank you, Mayor King. Yes, I wish to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Just in regards to the amended part of it, which was basically part B and section 1, was to just endorse what we're already doing in line with our climate emergency that we voted on earlier this year as well too, and just to align with our policy in respect to that. So to make sure that we're investing in green areas and also in socially and of course environmentally responsible areas. So if we're only getting a very minimal difference on the return, I think it is a great option to look at something that's a bit more greener rather than fossil fuel investments.
Councillor Thurley. Speaker for, is that right? Or an accidental pressing of the button? That's okay. Councillor Callaghan speaking for the motion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. Thank you for the amended motion, Deputy Mayor Bowen. I'd like to say that it is disappointing that T Corp cap investments to non-fossil fuel industries and socially responsible investments. And I think a big part of that is that advocacy is so important to really shift that mentality in that space. So I look forward to that cap increasing over the years and over time. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Edwards speaking for the motion.
Thank you, Mayor King. The New South Wales Local Government Investment Policy Guidelines require that councils exercise care, diligence and skill that a prudent person would exercise in investing council funds. The support for council climate action was a significant feature of the recent Albury 2050 community feedback. And here is another opportunity to be a leading council and not only manage these public funds with care, diligence and skill, but to also meet the expectations of our community on climate action and move away from investment in fossil fuels and financial institutions that support the fossil fuel industry. So I'm very happy to support this motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Bowen, did you wish to close debate or happy to put the motion?
I'm pretty sure that.
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure that the other councillors have covered everything that we need to do. So happy to put the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. In that case, I'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM14, Officers' Reports for Noting. CM 14.1, Investment Balances, May 2022. Councillor Betteridge.
Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that Council receives and notes the investment balances report for May 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you, Councillor Betteridge. Did you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor King.
Any speakers for or against? Or questions? In that case, Councillor Betteridge, happy to put the motion?
I am, thank you very much.
All right, those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item CM 14.2, Mountain Bike Strategy Report on Trail Maintenance Works Completed. Councillor Betteridge.
Through you, Mayor King, I would like to move that Council receives and notes the progress with implementation of the Albury mountain bike strategy, in particular mountain bike trail maintenance works undertaken across Albury, as well as unauthorised trail and jump removal, remediation works and revegetation.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Any speakers for or against? Actually, first off, start with Councillor Betteridge. Apologies. Did you wish to make any comments?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Albury-Wodonga mountain bike strategy, I think, was a long time in birthing. It's an exciting strategy and it's good to receive updates on what's happening. And I think the critical point that I see through the mountain bike strategy is that mountain biking can be undertaken in environmentally sensitive areas if they're well planned, and the unauthorised trail and jump building or making of is strictly controlled. This is key to having a good strategy, and it's good to see that we're doing it. And also the revegetation of the areas further enhances the environmental work that can be done. All in all, very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Betteridge. Any speakers for or against? Is that Councillor Baker?
Thank you, Mayor King. Yes, I'd like to speak for the recommendation and just say it's really good to have a proper strategy mapped out that everyone can adhere to. And it's quite critical that the leisurely walkers and wanderers across our hills and beautiful landscapes get on with the mountain bikers. And if there are areas that the mountain bike people can go and they look after them, that would be a great thing for the relationship between the two, because you don't want them not getting on well with each other and actually not fighting for the same space. But I agree with Councillor Betteridge. The unauthorised parts are where there could be trouble. And I think if the mountain bikers know that they'll be looked after better if they don't go off on their own and cut through the bush and make their own areas, we'll all be happier and be able to work in harmony. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. And also just to reiterate on what Councillor Baker and Councillor Betteridge have also started to mention as well, is the fact that they are going to be separated with really minimal, if at all, crossover points between the walkers and the mountain bikers. So I think that it can be done in harmony, provided they have got their own spaces. I think it's a win-win for everybody. So I'd like to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Betteridge, did you wish to sum up?
Just quickly, thank you. In the community, there is some genuine concern about the concept of walkers and mountain bike riders sharing space. If they do share space, it'll be on very low gradient and very slow terrain. Good planning will enable fast terrain riders to be separated from the walkers. This is what the plan's about. This is why you have a strategy, and it does work elsewhere. It's not as though we're trying to reinvent the wheel. The staff, with diligence, will come up with a plan that we can all enjoy and be safe. And I think it's going to be an absolute boon for the area. And I applaud the staff's work on this, and thank you very much for it.
Thank you, Councillor Betteridge. Let's put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM15, delegates' reports for noting. There are none. Item CM16, notice of urgent business. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I have two items that I'd like to bring up. One, the Albury City's audited statements received a high risk finding in one part, and the matter was unrecorded rural firefighting equipment. And I noticed that the government seems to be at war internally on this one. A report from the Secretary of the Department of Planning and Environment says, I acknowledge the state's position is that it does not control RFS assets. Councils need to assess whether they control any rural firefighting equipment in accordance with Australian accounting standards. Well, we've said quite clearly we don't control the resources. So 68 other councils have been impacted by this, and they've refused to record the assets, and they've refused to wear the costs, which last year were $145 million. So I guess what I'm asking in this really is a question to the CEO. Where are we up to with saying this is just ridiculous, and that high risk finding in our audit should be removed?
Mr. CEO.
Thanks for the question through you, Mayor King. So we've been saying it's ridiculous for a number of years now, and in probably not in those words in our financial statements, indicating that we don't control the assets. Absolutely, we don't control the assets. So this is a conversation for the Treasury, the Rural Fire Service Minister, the Auditor General to sort out. What we will be doing shortly, though, is in accordance with the OLG's guidance, is making an assessment of, well, what assets, if any, do we actually control? So we'll get a list of those assets from RFS and actually make that determination first and foremost. And I'll be surprised if there's a whole heap of those assets that we've got any control over, but we're certainly going through that process again now that we've been provided with that list of information and following that guidance from OLG. But the advocacy is alive and well, and we're supporting, obviously, through Local Government New South Wales. You might have seen the circular late on Friday to progress that directly with the responsible ministers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Callaghan.
I have a matter of urgent business, but I believe Councillor Thurley had a second one.
Sorry, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you. A week or so ago, Councillors Baker, Bowen and I went to a breakfast which was about big picture learning at James Fallon High School. This is a very innovative program which allows students at those schools to somewhat drop out of the standard curriculum and pursue issues about which they have a passion. I spoke to one young woman, and her passion is cybersecurity and cybercrime. And so she's looking to where she can go to find out more about that and so on. And one of the things they do is they have what are called shadow days. These are full or half days where the student has the opportunity to visit you at your workplace or organisation and spend the day actively learning through observation. Given that this council basically runs numerous businesses, gardening, horticulture, cybersecurity, accounting, planning, I think we'd be an ideal employer to let these students come and talk, or perhaps we could go to them and make a presentation. And I'm happy to share the information I've got and the contact details, and hope that council might want to take that one up.
Mr. CEO.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor King. Councillor Thurley, please, happy to take that information. We'll have our people and culture team look at that.
Thank you. No more from Councillor Thurley. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. And I raise this because we will not have an opportunity to meet again before this happens, but I would like to raise awareness around NAIDOC Week, which celebrates the history, culture and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And NAIDOC Week commences this Saturday on July the 3rd through to July the 10th, which is a wonderful week ahead. So this is a great opportunity for all Australians to learn more about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. It's also in support of the reconciliation plan from this evening and the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And I would encourage all of our local citizens, both Albury and Wodonga, to attend these events throughout the week, including the Gateway Island Sculpture Walk, which leads to the local NAIDOC main event at Gateway Lakes, which is going to be on the Lincoln Causeway from 10 a.m. this Saturday. It's get up, stand up and show up. And I think if we can all show up at 10 a.m. on Friday at the Lincoln Causeway, it'll be a great way to finish off the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Bowen, did you have a clarification there?
Thank you, Mayor King. Just to you, Councillor Callaghan, just want to clarify the date of that you mentioned, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yes, so it commences, NAIDOC Week goes for the week from July 3rd to the 10th. However, the main event will be held on July the 9th.
Thank you.
At the Lincoln Causeway from 10 a.m.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. I just wasn't sure that you said that July 9th. I wanted to make sure it was clear.
Thank you.
On Saturday, July 9th.
Thanks,
Yeah.
councillors. I do believe it is in our councillors' diary as well. Thank you,
It
Councillor
is.
Callaghan, for that. Appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. No more items of urgent business, councillors. Item CM17, confidential matters. There are none. Therefore, I declare tonight's council meeting closed at 7:32. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Guy. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Well done remotely. I know it's hard.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Yeah.